Okay, my name is Willie Baptist, like a Baptist church. That's B-A-P-T-I-S-T. I'm formerly homeless. I lived on the streets of Philadelphia for a while. I've been poor all my life. I've worked all kinds of jobs, you name it, from dishwasher to construction work. I've done all the kinds of work that you can think of. And I'm still basically poor, my family and all. And I've been involved with organizing in impoverished communities and also in shops, workshops and factories for over 40 years now, and accumulated a good number of years of experience of organizing, of working among the most dispossessed and exploited in the society. And despite the stereotypes that you hear, that poor people can indeed think for themselves, they can fight for themselves, they can provide leadership, not only for themselves but for the entire country. There is a rich reservoir of geniuses out there who are having to make ends meet with meager means, and the thought process is really measured by people able to make something out of nothing. To me, there's more intelligence in that than people who are born with a silver spoon in their mouths and really don't have to take very much responsibility. They're projected as intelligent because they got those, all the degrees and all that stuff. But the real intelligence is deep in these impoverished communities, these communities where plants are being laid off, been shut down, and you have families that are trying to eke out a living. I don't care what color you're talking about. You're talking about blacks, white, Hispanic, and so on. And I've worked in those communities over the years, and I've learned, the tremendous genius that exists. And this is, to me, an indictment on this society, because here you have this tremendous reservoir and resource of intelligence that can help improve society, and yet they are just allowing it to just go and waste and die away. I was awakened to social responsibility during the 60s. In 1965, August 11, some 60,000 to 100,000 people hit the streets in militant protests against the inhumane condition that exists in Watts, California, which was the poorest community in the state of California. And that inaugurated a whole period of uprisings throughout the country. Some 300 or more cities erupted over that on the course of the latter 60s. It is called, that period is called the greatest social upheaval since the Civil War. It was a tremendous experience that I was part of, and it really shaped me to see things not just from an individual point of view, but from a point of view of social responsibility. I've seen the social nature of crises in these communities. At that time, the people who were most involved at the forefront of those uprisings were youth. I was 17 years old. We were having to endure upwards of 70% unemployment. And some of the uprisings that you're seeing today on a global level, it kind of reminds me of that period, because you have in most of these uprisings where you're talking about in the Middle East, or you're talking about in Scotland, or you're talking about Greece, or UK just recently, or Wisconsin. You're talking about the participation of the youth in that process, and that's what happened during that period. I was 17 years old, and the Watts uprising made an indelible impression on me, and it shaped me. There's other experiences. I was involved with the national organizing drive for the Homeless Union in the late 80s and early 90s, which was a great experience because here you had homeless people organizing homeless people. And then this went against 3 to 4 decades of discussion and debate in this country describing poverty and homelessness as a result of the self-infliction by the homeless or the poor themselves. Somehow they were the blame for their their mishaps. Somehow they wanted to get laid off. Somehow they would prefer to be homeless or be poor. But of course, that's not the case. But a lot of people fell into this welfare queen discussion, these kind of stereotypes. It still lingers today about what poverty is and where it comes from. Anyway, the Homeless Union and this activity really disproved that effort. We organized upwards of 15,000 to 20,000 people, homeless people, throughout the United States in some 25 states. We had about 25, almost 25 locals that were established, a homeless union, and we was able to make quite a bit of noise. We learned that by coagulating, you have a greater voice, and people can't mistake you, and they begin to see in your problem a social cause and not just individual cause when you're uniting in action like that. And that experience was indelible on my mind in terms of the kind of activities that we carried out. But of all those, and both experiences, and a lot of other experiences I've been through in my life, I'm 63 years old right now, I've learned that the most crucial thing in organizing and uniting and making change in this country is the development of leaders. If you don't have at the forefront a solid group of leaders who are committed, clear, competent, and connected to what's going on, you're not going to sustain your effort, and you're not going to succeed. And if you look at all of world history as well as United States history, you'll see that those movements that were most successful are the movements that was able to develop their own leadership and committed leaders, particularly from the ranks of those who were most effective, but not exclusive. And so this lesson clearly was corroborated by my experience, because despite the tremendous attention that the uprisings of the 60s was able to gain, including a open letter from Vietnam thanking the people of Watts for holding back the American military forces from coming to Vietnam for about 2 weeks. I mean, it was those uprisings were activities that was heard around the world. Despite all of that, still the forces in the country that was more organized, the powers that be, was able to manipulate that and utilize that uprising. For example, Ronald Reagan, he was introduced into politics on the basis of his agitation against the Watts uprising, these criminals and so on. He was able, for the first time in his life in terms of entering into politics, to become a governor of California in his Watts uprising agitation against the blacks, and just making this call and appeal to poor and working class whites to be afraid of these criminals hitting the streets and law and order and that kind of thing. And he, along with other forces, was able to utilize, that kind of activity to build in domestic and foreign policies that we're having to live with today. And those of us who participated in the Watts uprising and all the other uprisings took place, we're still learning the lessons of how we were, even though we was able to get tremendous amount of attention, we were still manipulated and used like pawns. We didn't realize that we were part of a bigger power game that was being used to build a kind of consensus that set the stage for the religious rights, the moral majority, and this further disuniting of the poor whites with the poor blacks, this separation, this kind of wall, and the reinforcement of this kind of de facto segregation. Well, I was talking about the influence. I'm talking about the influence of the Watts uprising and the subsequent uprisings that was ignited during the latter 60s, and what impact it had on me. And this is just to give you an idea of who I am and why I am who I am. I was involved again, coming out of that experience. I was really made sensitive to social problems and how my particular problem as a poor and working class black guy, how that was shaped by events that took place. And I am still a student of those experiences. I'm still looking back at those experiences to learn all the lessons about those experiences, and that is still shaping me in terms of what need to be done today. One of the things, again, that the most important lesson I learned is that that poor people and dispossessed have the capability of leadership. They can think for themselves, and they can organize themselves. They can fight for themselves. And this is despite this kind of charity notion of how do we fix the poor, and how they're just so helpless. One of the main slogans that we used in the National Union of the Homeless that galvanized the whole movement was "Homeless, not helpless," because we had to go against this 3 decades of the underclass and they're criminals. Their problem is self-inflicted. They were inert and inept, and that was the reason why they're poor. And it wasn't because they were laid off for reasons of profit. It wasn't because they were made homeless because the housing market and need for profits. None of that came. The whole structure of the problem and the social nature of the problem was obscured by these stereotypes that says it's your fault. It's something you didn't do. And those of us who've been through hard times, we've learned to internalize it. I mean, I know with me, I'm still have my own civil war in me because I'm constantly triggered into the notion that I ain't shit, man. I'm nothing. I'm a failure, and I keep coming because that's what the society every day is embedded in me. But I was very fortunate coming out of those experiences to hook up with other folks to begin to talk in terms of what we're going to try to do about this, how we're going to organize, and being part of those collectives was a way in which I was able to combat this kind of internalized oppression that still exists. This stuff is deep, man. It's deep in every poor person. We all have it, Sometimes it's found expressed in drugs and, alcohol and, whatever. It operates in a way that we are unable to really appreciate our strengths and our intelligence. I always talk to a lot of these college grads and say, "Oh, you're so smart. Go live off and go walk over there to Harlem." They're scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. The last thing they want to know, they got this book learning. And they think that that's intelligence. And yeah, you can get a lot of knowledge from reading books, and books sums up a whole lot of experience in world history. But life experience is very important too. And what you find in these communities is people who are able to really draw the lessons and try to navigate for survival. And it takes tremendous mental effort and intelligence. And, getting to know people and then, and just reflecting on myself and what I've done and what I haven't done, mistakes that I've made, it really shaped the kind of person I am today. The key lesson that I think is absolutely key, that is confirmed by my experience and confirmed by all the study of history, that if you're going to solve a big problem, you have to have a big solution. And a big solution historically, especially to a social problem, is the building of a social movement. You got to put a lot of hands on deck, man. You can't solve it like, there's no Superman or Superwoman. That's what they got us thinking we can do it by ourselves. Nobody can do anything by themselves. They can only do it in relationship to community and collectivity. In fact, their individuality and what their strength comes out in that relationship, and by them building organization or community and collectivity and that kind of thing, they have tremendous strength to solve a big problem. And we have a big problem. Even to this day, the problems as a result of the 2007, 2008 crises, you're talking about not only the poor situation the situation of the poor getting worse, we're finding increasing segments of the middle class income being thrown into poverty. And they're experiencing, even today, something like nearly 10,000 foreclosures are still going on as we speak. This is happening. It's not in the media. They don't talk about it. But the fact is that people are hurting. And it doesn't stop at the color. You don't care what color you are. And I think that's a very important lesson for me, because I grew up in a segregated black community. And I thought all white people were rich. But I met a guy by the name of Chicago. I said, that's a damn lie. But and right now, with the way this crisis is unfolding, it's clear that this thing no color, no sex, no educational level, because you got people who have white-collar people who are being thrown into a position of poverty. The solution has always in history been the amalgamation of all those forces coming together on the basis of what they have in common. Not on the basis of their differences, appreciating their differences in terms of what they have to contribute, but understanding what is they have in common. That if you're hurt, I'm hurt. And once you develop that kind of leadership and that type of a commitment and conviction, you created a force that has to be reckoned with, and you created the basis of solving the problem. That struggle against slavery was a struggle because people developed a commitment against slavery. The struggle against the British Empire, the sun never set on it. And these puny colonies, 13 colonies, got a conviction that no, you're not going to do this. And they defeated them. And if we can create a leadership that can will together people that are hurting from the existing problems that we're facing, we can win. Because in history, people have won that way. And that's how you win. And and I think that what we're trying to do in my current situation, that is, right now I'm the coordinator of the Poverty Initiative here at Union Theological Seminary's Poverty Scholars Program. And what it is a program that are focusing on identifying leaders who are emerging out of these struggles around housing, food, jobs, health care, all these crises that are besetting this country and besetting the world. People who are fighting, who are part of communities that are fighting these struggles, identifying the leaders that are coming forward, put them in a relationship with each other where they can learn from each other as well as to study and learn from history, to develop a kind of sophistication that at least match the sophistication of those powers that be, or those forces in our society that benefit from my poverty and from your poverty. And if we can have that kind of sophistication that is least comparable to the sophistication of these of the forces that are benefiting from the status quo, then we can change the status quo. And it ain't going to be done by some individual. It's going to be done by us coming together on the basis of an understanding of our common plight. And I think when we study the history of leadership developments, there's a number of qualities that have surfaced that are very important that we have to consider when we talk about leadership development. I mentioned this earlier, but we put it into 4C, what you call the 4 C's. You got to have clarity. If you're blind, you can't do anything. The blind can't lead the blind. You got to have some clarity about analytical clarity. That is a clarity that takes you to an understanding of why the problem. If you don't know why the problem, you don't know the cause of the problem, then you're reduced to picking off the leaf of the problem or the branch of the problem at the most, but you never get to the root. And you get frustrated and burned out and cynical because the leaves and the branches keep growing back. That's what happened with a weed. You cut the top of the weed off, the weed keep coming back if you don't get to the root. But unless you have a clarity, an analytical clarity that allows you to understand the depth and root of a problem, you're not going to solve the problem. So a leader who's ultimately understands the problem and put forth solutions to the problem. That's who a leader is. A leader is not someone that's good looking, wear good clothes, and can talk good. A leader is someone who can put forth a solution to my problem. You got a solution to my problem, then you my leader. And if we're going to resolve a problem, we got to have a clarity about what the problem is. Like Martin Luther King pointed out, is that your prescription to a disease is directly related, the accuracy of the prescription is directly related to your accurate diagnosis. If you have the wrong diagnosis of a problem, you're going to have the wrong prescription. And we all have the wrong diagnosis. You know, we think the problem is us, and that's why the problem is never solved, because it ain't us. It has to do with how the society is organized, its priorities, and a small section of the population is constantly benefiting from it while the rest of us catch hell. And we're like a sleeping giant, too. We're a sleeping giant, and the people who control everything and benefit is like the flea. And so they shit on us, piss on us, they beat their chest on us, long as we're asleep. And we're asleep because of divisive questions around race. We're asleep because of drugs. We're asleep because of our ignorance. We're asleep as a giant. But all we have to do is wake up, because once you wake up, he's just a flea. You can flick him off. But their job is to keep us asleep, But leadership is about bringing clarity and waking up the giant, so the giant can flick off this flea that's keeping us asleep and oppressed and exploited. Anyway, clarity is one thing that's critical in this process. The second quality of a leader is one of competence. That is, a leader is someone who masters the art of leadership, the art of strategy and tactics. How you relate what you're doing today to what your ultimate goals are. You know, how each step that is taken by your efforts and your movement or your struggle leads to the top of the staircase. You know, it's about strategy and tactics. It's about learning how to organize, how to unite, how do you combat efforts to prevent unity and prevent organization by those forces that are arrayed against you. This competence is a very important thing, which I think sometimes that's overlooked. I think that's probably one of the weakest areas, because there's a tendency for us to equate morality, or whether we are right or wrong, with strategy and tactics. It's just because you're right don't mean you're gonna be effective. There's a lot of people that are right, but they're dead right because they're ineffective. And so being effective and efficient is the C that we call competence. The third C has to do with commitment. Now I've seen a lot of people who are very smart and they can talk a good talk, but when the thing comes down to struggle, they nowhere around. I remember when I was in the, I went out during the Watts uprising. You know, me and my friends, they would, you know, call me and say, "Come on out," and I had to wait till my father wasn't around because he was trying to keep us indoors. And I went out. And I used to go out and just check people out, man. It was like a festival, man. It was like people felt free in that thing. I mean, if you study what happened during that uprising, people just felt real free. You know, the police and just the police relationship was very bad. And in the first 2 days of the riot, they was able to handcuff the police. The police force in L.A. was about 7,000 standing force, and the Watts community and the whole area that they had, circled off was larger than the Watts community. You had a community of about anywhere between 300 to 4,000, 40,000 people. A good segment of those people was out in the street. And when they hit the street at the same time, there's no way a standing force of 7,000 can deal with people simultaneously out in the streets. So we rendered in the first couple of days, the police null and void. They couldn't do anything. We defeated, and we was happy as shit, man. You know, because we had heard cases of the police taking 15-year-old girls into their cars and raping them. There was incidents where police would ask for people's identification card, and as they reached for their identification card, they would shoot them point blank range, and then declared they thought that was he was going for their gun. And these are cases that happen over and over again. And the relationship, particularly with the youth element, was a bad relationship between the police and the community. And but anyway, when we was able to handcuff them in the first couple of days, it was like bonfires, man. It was like, you know. But then they brought in the National Guard. Then they brought in the bigger forces. But anyway, this question of being able to stick and stay the course, to persevere in a struggle, to be committed to the community, to be committed to something larger than you. That having that commitment, that clarity, and that competency is very important, indispensable qualities of a leader. And of course, the fourth C is connected to each other as other leaders, as you can compare notes, coordinate efforts, as well as connected, most importantly, to people who are in struggle. And seeing that your strength is tied to those who are in struggle. And they're beginning to awaken, this giant I talk about. And I'm often reminded when I talk about this particular quality of being connected to Greek mythology. There's a Greek hero named Antaeus. Antaeus' mother was Gaia, who was Mother Earth. His father was Poseidon, who's the god of the sea, and he was close to his mother, Mother Earth. And the thing about Antaeus was that he was invincible, as long as he was connected to Mother Earth. If people come after him, man, he kick ass every time they come in. He just beat the shit out of them, man. They couldn't touch him as long as he had his connection to the earth. You couldn't deal with it. But finally, he was defeated by another hero, and that was Hercules. And the way that Hercules defeated Antaeus was to pick him up and separate him from the earth, and he throttled him in the air. He beat him up. He defeated him. And the lesson is that if you're going to be a leader, you got to be connected to the people. You got to be concerned about the people. You got to be committed to the people. You got to be committed to the community. You got to find strength in the people, and not in this, I'm Superman, I'm by myself, I'm this tough individual. That shit don't work, man. It really don't. I mean, that's the biggest lie that they done told us, man. And we all try to be Superman and Superwoman, and we never live up to those standards. And so we are always frustrated with ourselves because we never meet that kind of quality. And it's in all history, human history, the whole point of society is that you draw strength, and you're able to you understand your own individual strength in relationship to the community, your connection with the community, and your connection with other leaders. And so these four qualities, what we saw the 4 C's, is crucial when we talk about leadership development. And developing leaders is to unite leaders. Developing leaders is have them develop the analytical ability, the clarity, develop the commitment, the competence, and the connectedness that allows them to pull together a big movement, which becomes the big solution to this big problem that we're dealing with. And that's the growth of poverty, unheard of poverty, against this tremendous concentration and centralization of wealth to very few people. And that problem persists. The recent crisis, 2007 crisis, have revealed the inhumanity and insanity of that contradiction. And I think there's enough people who are getting mad about this problem because they're hurting from it. But it's not enough to be angry. You can be pissed, but if you're not clear, you're not committed, you're not connected, you're not competent, you're not going to win, man. And what's the point, man? Just to make a fight? I hear this thing, fight the good fight. Okay, that sounds nice, man. But the point is to win. And we can win provided we have the clarity and understanding of the problem we're dealing with. And we understand and we appreciate our strengths. And we have strength, even though they tell us that we don't have strength. In fact, that's why they tell us we don't have strength. That's why they tell the giant to keep the giant asleep, because they know once he wake up, all hell's gonna break loose. And our job is to wake him up, and that's what a leader does. And that's why we see at this particular stage that those who are the first to awaken necessarily are the leaders, and those are the people that we're trying to gather in this next period, and what I've learned over the years is absolutely critical if we're going to win the war. If we don't win this battle for the leaders, we're not going to win the war to end poverty and human suffering. It's just as clear as that. And the powers that be and their political strategists and theoretical analysts and theologians are clear on that. And they're doing everything they can to preempt and prevent the amalgamation and development of leaders. In fact, they're trying to put themselves and their representatives at the forefront of our efforts and be our leaders. We got to train and develop our own leaders. And whoever, I don't care where they come from, they can come from anywhere. If they want to be committed to a struggle to end poverty, which not only affect the poor, but affect the entire society. This is not an issue. The issue of poverty is not an issue of the poor. It's more that the poor situation is indicative of the total breakdown of the society. And if it doesn't affect you today, it's going to affect you tomorrow. If not materially, it's going to affect you morally. And if we don't take advantage of the fact that this society has tremendous wherewithal and resources where nobody has to go hungry. Nobody should be homeless. Nobody in this society. Not only in society, but the world. We have the capacity, the world productive capacity is such that nobody has to starve. I mean, even in this country, every year, research has it, that every year some 46 billion pounds of food is thrown away. It's just thrown away when it only takes 4 billion pounds of food to feed every man, woman, and child. 46 billion pounds is thrown away. Why? Why is that waste? For purposes of profit. I'm going to put more money in my pocket, and I'm not going to get more money in my pocket if I give this food away. So I'm going to throw it away, poison it, put it in a dumpster so we don't have the dumpster divers come get the food, so they can come buy my food. That's the way the society is organized, man. It's not organized around people's lives and people. And I think that this is something that is crucial. And I should just end on this point, that one of the, and this had a very important impression on my life too, is the fact that my name is Willie, and my father, who didn't go past the 8th grade, he was able to get a number of the kids at my age at that time to join a baseball team. We put it in a baseball team, and it really saved my life, because you had gang activities, you had all kinds of activity, but he had organized us into a baseball team in the Little League. And later on, I got a scholarship to Pepperdine, and that was during the time they were drafting a lot of people for the Vietnam War. And I was able to get out of it because I had a baseball scholarship. And that was because my father, who hadn't gone past the 8th grade, was smart enough to organize these poor kids and put them into this league, and some of us was able to develop our skills to the point where I got a baseball scholarship. And I didn't graduate, but I went to school for 4 years, or 3.5 years anyway. And but anyway, I was really taken by baseball. And so anybody that was named Wilbert or Billy or whatever, William, you would call Willie, because at that time Willie Mays was the big star. So that's how I got my nickname is Willie. And I used to be a fanatic about baseball, man. I used to watch every game I can watch, and especially after the game when they do these interviews of these stars, and they tell you how to run a base and how to catch a ball, how to bat, how to hit the ball properly. And so my eyes are peeled, my ears are wide open, listening to every word they have to say. And so I'm listening to this thing as if, baseball is larger than life. I mean, hitting the ball with a bat or running a base, when it's all said and done, don't amount very much in terms of life situation. But for me, as a kid, impressionable kid, I was really into baseball. And so, people like Willie Mays and some of the other stars at that time would come on TV after the game and, give their tips. And one time, Jackie Robinson was interviewed. And so I'm waiting for him to tell me how he do what he did on second base, because I was a second baseman. He was a second baseman too. And then his comment was nothing. When he was interviewed, he said nothing about baseball. Gave any tips about how to run a base or how to catch a base or play second base, and I was kind of disappointed. But he made this comment that only within recent times I'm beginning to fully appreciate how profound it was. And what he said was, that he said that an individual life is not important. An individual's life is not important except in the impact that that individual make on other human lives. And that the most lofty thing that you can do is to elevate the human condition. I mean, he summed up, hundreds of thousands of years of human history. That the most important thing is not how much things you got, how many things you got, how, about me, I. It's about what you do to other people and how you elevate the community. That your life, you feel complete and you have peace of mind when you're building community. I thought, it was quite a statement for a baseball player, and only now I'm fully appreciating that the most lofty thing that you can build yourself around is the notion of working with other people and helping to elevate the human condition, and that your life, it's just as an individual, isolated from the community, amounts to very little if it's not making impact on other lives. And so that's my story, man.